So one of the biggest struggles anxiety sufferers face, this was a struggle that really affected me and really hindered my recovery, was this idea of how do I really even know it's anxiety? I actually don't feel like it's anxiety. And one of the reasons why is you may be experiencing these debilitating physical symptoms, these intrusive thoughts, these feelings of unreality, even when you're not anxious. So how could you be struggling with anxiety if you're experiencing these symptoms if you're not anxious? Surely there must be something else, right? Well, in this video, I actually want to talk about why you're experiencing symptoms even when you're not anxious. And even though you're experiencing these symptoms, it's actually still part of anxiety. Look, this was one of the things that really threw me off. It was one of the reasons why I was so hard to convince that I had anxiety. And then once I understood this, it really was a major aha moment. It was like a light bulb went off. And that's really when my recovery journey started. So pay attention. So the problem really lies with this term anxiety. The truth is the word anxiety doesn't really tell you much. Anxiety is kind of a catch-all term. You know, I'm nervous before making this video, I'm anxious. If I'm a little bit nervous about something else or something that's like actually a life situation that would cause anybody stress, I'm anxious. But you also experiencing these physical symptoms, these feelings of unreality, these intrusive thoughts, well, you're anxious as well. So saying, well, it's anxiety doesn't really tell you that much. It's too generalized. And that was one of the major keys I didn't understand. See, my anxiety started off as a panic attack. Once I got my first panic attack, naturally, I was terrified of getting another panic attack. And so what ended up happening? I ended up getting more panic attacks because I was fearing getting a panic attack. That's typically how it works. And what ended up happening is my anxiety became more chronic. I started experiencing really terrible physical symptoms. For me, the scariest symptom by far was digestive issues. I had feelings of unreality. I had other symptoms like palpitations. My blood pressure was up. I felt all these things, but for some reason, digestion really threw me off. And so when I went to the doctors, they said, well, Shaan, it's anxiety. And so I kind of looked at them and I was like, are you just saying I'm making this up? Are you saying I'm not having these physical symptoms? Are you saying this is all in my head? Because I can assure you this is very, very, very physical. And they didn't really have an answer for me. They said, look, I've just looked at all your medical tests. Everything is clear. It's like the default is anxiety then. If nothing is there and you're experiencing it and there's nothing physically wrong, well, then it's anxiety. And so I never really understood that. And one of the things that really convinced me that this wasn't anxiety was, well, I'm experiencing these symptoms even when I'm not nervous. Like when I'm not making a video, or if I'm not presenting, like I was experiencing palpitations. Just laying in bed, I would experience a panic attack. I wasn't anxious being in bed. So why was I experiencing this? And again, it kind of came down to the fact of, well, telling someone they have anxiety doesn't really say anything because it can mean anything. And so the key was, this was really the key that really helped me understand better. There is anxiety that you have, like nervousness, but then there's a different type of anxiety. This anxiety is more based on state. Your state being what we call the fight or flight response. So it's this idea that if you've seen a threat, let's say if you see a tiger or you see a lion or you see a bear or a snake, you kind of respond in either your body physiologically changes where you either fight it or you run away. Now, this state is used to protect us from predators. However, even today's day and age, we still have the same physiological mechanisms. Here's the interesting thing. The problem is that these physiological mechanisms don't really know what's a real threat and what's not. It looks at you for it. And so what happens when you start experiencing physical symptoms like there's a tiger when there's no tiger? Well, that's even more confusing because, well, if there was a tiger and you reacted that way, that would make sense, but you're not experiencing a tiger. There's no tiger, and yet you're still experiencing the symptoms. Well, maybe there's something physiologically wrong. And so that's why you're experiencing these symptoms even when you're not anxious or you're not nervous or you're not scared. And so really what you're experiencing, this was the key. And for me, it was by a doctor by the name of Dr. Claire Weeks. And she wrote this book in the 60s and she really explained it's not just anxiety. What she coined the term is your nerves are sensitized, meaning your nervous system that's primed for the fight or flight response. It's primed to survive, and it's responding to everything as a threat. Small basic stressors, your nervous system over exaggerates in fear. It responds in that fight or flight mode. It starts releasing adrenaline for everything small. And so that was a huge part of me understanding anxiety, because it wasn't about, well, me being nervous, like how it was when I was growing up. If I was nervous, I was anxious. But this was, I was experiencing this state all the time. And so that's one key to really understand. If you can understand this, it will really help you demystify what's happening. It'll help you understand that, okay, so this is why I'm experiencing these symptoms out of nowhere. And so what happens is you don't have to go into this fix-it mode every time. Why did it happen now? Why did it not happen then? Okay, maybe if I avoid that place, I won't end up experiencing it. So it's really important to understand the mechanics, and really the key here is understanding sensitization, that this is state dependent, and your state doesn't fluctuate that frequently. It's pretty stagnant. So if you're in this fight or flight mode, you're in this state for a long time. It's not just moments, it's days, it's weeks, it's months. It just depends on how long you've struggled with this. Once I understood that, my symptoms, when I was experiencing it, they didn't throw me off as much. They didn't surprise me as much. I understood that I was experiencing these physical symptoms, these intrusive thoughts, these feelings of unreality, these emotions, because I was in this state, not because there was an actual threat. So it's very, very important to understand this concept of sensitization, because that's really what you're struggling with. Anxiety is too much of a catch-all term. And so if you really want to understand a little bit more about the mechanics, really dive in deep into helping you understand why you're experiencing these symptoms, then, well, if you understand why it's happening, you will naturally know what to do to make this go away. Right now, you're still kind of confused. How do I get out of this? What do I do? So what I've done is I've written out a report. This is step by step. This is exactly what I did to fully overcome, and this is exactly what I get my clients to do to fully overcome. And one of the first steps I always teach everybody is you have to understand what's happening. You have to eliminate that shock value. Why is this happening all the time? Because if you're trying to figure out what's happening, well, then you're not focusing on the solution. You can only do one thing at a time. So it's very important to understand why you're experiencing these symptoms, which is because of sensitization. And because of that, you can really, once you know what's happening, well, then you can really focus on the solution. So I've written out this report. It's for you. It's free. I don't charge anybody. And the reason why I wrote this is because it was one of the major things that if someone would have just told me this during my anxiety, I would have minimized so much unnecessary suffering. I would have been able to understand. Somebody would have just told me and I was like, oh, okay, that's why it's happening. Now I can focus on the solution. And so I know that's exactly what you're going through. You're trying to figure out what's happening, but you don't know. So I've written out this report, read through it, read it carefully, read it multiple times if you need to, really understand it. And furthermore, even if you want to know more, I highly challenge you, buy Claire Week's book, Hope and Help for Your Nerves. She's great. She's a pioneer. Everybody that I've met that has recovered and helps other people recover, they are all followers of Dr. Claire Weeks. It's almost like, she's like the main teacher and we're kind of her students, and, we're kind of helping. We don't say anything different because our lives depended on it too. Our anxiety depended on it. So that report is down below. Definitely check it out. So once you understand sensitization, well, then you really need to focus on, okay, well, how do I desensitize my nerves? How do I come back to baseline? How do I go back to the way things used to be? And really, once you understand the mechanics, you understand that, well, because you're in this state, the state isn't going to lift very quickly. It's going to take time. See, look, as humans, our nervous system is really designed in three different, there's three core principles for our nervous system to a degree. This is an oversimplification, but it's to seek pleasure, avoid pain, minimize energy expenditure. And so out of all these three things, avoiding pain is the most important thing, because the truth is that it only took one time prehistorically for us to be wrong about a threat, and the threat was actually there. For example, the bush is shaking a little bit, and you're like, oh, it's probably just the wind, but it actually ended up being a tiger. And so if it's a tiger and you're close to it, well, that's game over, right? And so your nervous system is designed to assume the worst case scenario because it just takes one time for it to be wrong. And so it's very stubborn. Your nervous system is really designed to protect you. Your body's designed to protect you. In a way, anxiety is just trying to protect you. The only thing here is that it doesn't know what's a real threat and what's not. And because it doesn't know, it's assuming there's a tiger behind every bush. It's assuming that there's a threat everywhere. Now, what you are experiencing are the physical symptoms that are kind of like a byproduct of being in that state. You're experiencing the intrusive thoughts that are a byproduct of that state. Same with the feelings of unreality, the derealization, depersonalization. So if you understand that, well, your nervous system is designed to avoid pain and that that's the most critical thing, well, your nervous system is going to be stubborn. It's not going to just believe you when you start allowing the symptoms to be there. It's going to take some convincing. Well, because it wants to protect you. It doesn't want to be wrong. So it's going to, even though it sees you respond correctly, it's going to take some time to build up that momentum. It's going to take some time for your nerves to desensitize. So a lot of people have this fear of, oh, I've been struggling with anxiety for X amount of time, and because I've been struggling with anxiety, my nerves are permanently sensitized. That is absolutely not true. Your nervous system is very fluid. It's very dynamic. It shifts based on what it considers a threat or not. And so, the key here really is to understand that nerves desensitizing does take time. It's not overnight. It doesn't, it doesn't take, a couple of times of accepting and allowing and reading that report. It's really putting it into place and really showing your nervous system, almost kind of like teaching it how to like relearning how to ride a bike, how to really identify what's a threat and what's not. Now, the consequence of your nervous system desensitizing is the physical symptoms end up actually going away. The intrusive thoughts end up going away. The feelings of unreality go away. The numbness, the sadness, the other emotions that you experience, they also disappear. So once you understand that, then, well, you can really focus on desensitizing and you can actually get to recovery. Now, the last thing I'm going to say here is, look, recovery is hard. I mean, I had to do it by myself. All I had were a couple of books. I made a lot of mistakes, and I'm honestly in a way kind of blessed and fortunate that I still managed to overcome it. And so I have genuinely found the best way to recover isn't by piecemealing these videos or going online in the internet trying to figure it out. The best way is really just by someone taking you by the hand and just taking you to recovery themselves. Ideally, this person has gone through it themselves. And so, this isn't stuff you can just read in a book. Like, you really do have to experience it to know what someone else is going through. And so if you're really serious about overcoming this, streamlining this, really getting to recovery the fastest way possible, the best way is find somebody who you really trust, who you feel like has really gone through this, and have them take you by the hand and take you to recovery. Now, if you want, I will put a link down below. I have a private mentorship. I have a small group of individuals where I'm personally guiding them by the hand and taking them to full recovery. I don't care about them getting just a little bit better. I don't care about coping mechanisms. I care about if I'm working with this person, I'd rather focus on full recovery. So I work with a small group of people because my standards are very high. I want them to live normally again. I want them to go back to their old lives without any residual anxiety. So if that's you, well, why don't I just help you desensitize together? We'll just do this together, and I'll just take you by the hand and I'll guide you and I'll course correct you. And more importantly, I will personally make sure that these symptoms are disappearing. Not just telling you these steps and hope that you apply it. Well, I'll personally take you there. So if that's you, hit the link down below. When you hit the link, you're gonna go ahead and watch a short video, really describes how the mentorship works, the results, and really tell you if you're a good fit or not. And if you're a good fit, you'll just fill out an application. When you fill out the application, my team and I will review it. And if you're a good fit, we'll have a free strategy session, really evaluating your strengths, what your biggest roadblocks are. And if you're a good fit, I will personally take you underneath my wing and guide you to recovery myself. So the link is down below. Definitely check it out. I'll see you in the next video.